Okay, how's everybody doing? I hope everybody's doing great. Yeah, I want to take this opportunity to say thank you, everybody, for showing up. And good to see everybody here. I saw quite a few viewers pop on and pop off. Low attention span, maybe. No, I hope to see them back, actually. Probably just here checking. Let's see, who do we have in here today? Who's your squatch? Hello, Cognac 420, James Barrett, Sacred Silly. Shane Gabbard, looks like I missed you. You had to take off. Judy Wheeler, good as always to see you. Chris, great, awesome. Chris Snyder, Brad Forsey. Looks like I can't pronounce that. Tat Pura, good to see you as well. Excuse the pronunciation. Greg Olson, good to see you here. Hope everybody's doing great today. So the reason for this live stream is to announce the upcoming expedition to the Lodge Kill Zone area. It's been a long 5 years. A lot of people have asked when we're going to do this again, and we're going to do this again. So like I always said, we were waiting for the right team to come together. This isn't a normal place. It's not a normal expedition. The whole point is this is not to go have an encounter. Matter of fact, this is the one place that I'm actually hoping we don't have an encounter, to be honest with you. And the reason for doing this is to document this, because I've never seen anything like it anywhere. And when we talk about structures and things, and we say, oh, well, a person could have done this, or, it could have fallen here or fallen there. That just isn't the case in the kill zone and the lodge itself. These are massive constructions that could have only been done by purposeful manipulation, for one, and far and above and beyond what even a large group, as big a group of people as you could get to grab a tree, you still couldn't do what they did with it. And so we're going in here to document this because it must be documented, just plain and simple. I know and work with a lot of researchers, and there's just a ton of capable people out there, and there are people who have expressed their want to be involved in this one. And I'm going to say that this is a little different. This one is above and beyond. So I was basically letting divine intervention set this team together. And after 5 years, Chris Reinhardt actually went ahead and did the push and said, hey, let's do this. I'm ready to do this. And so I know a couple others. So we just kind of organically let it settle in, and for the people that are to be involved. And then a couple others really expressed their tenacity and their, steadfastness in making contact with me. They know I'm a busy person, and they kept reminding me, and they really expressed that and qualified themselves with experience and things, and they were selected by that. So we're going to have 7 people are going to go up on this one, and it's going to be quite the deal. The reason that we've got the number we do is basically diversity and experience. And as well, we want to be able to do a full examination and be safe. So it takes so many people to secure perimeter when you've got to use a buddy system. And in this location is one of those where potentially someone could vanish, let's say. Based on what's information been given to us over the years, there's been up to 30 people in a single year vanish from this area. But since there was no sign of criminal activity or a crime, I should say, there's been no investigation. As they say, well, sometimes people just want to vanish. But if they don't find an article of clothing and they don't find anything, or they take a look and there's no sign, then they just basically blow it off, tow the car, notify the family if they can, and that goes on the record. So that's what's been occurring in this place. This trail has been largely off limits due to its, for one, rugged nature, and it's a large descent and ascent back up, and people just don't want to drop into this deep, dark, nasty stuff. Lots of trees crossing the trail. You could have 20, 30 trees in a single trip that's crossing a short section of trail. And these are trees that you have to climb over or duck under. They're so large. So let's take another look here. So I see Wade's in here. This is actually a member of our team this time around. And I'll go ahead and let's take this opportunity real quick. If you haven't subscribed, please do. Our subscriptions are disappearing, so you may be unsubscribed and not realize, or whatever, or if you're not, go ahead and do that for us, and then check your subscription, your notifications especially, because those have a tendency of shutting off. We've had a lot of complaint about this occurring. and even being removed. Some people up to 10 times they've been removed as subs and had to resub. So go ahead and do that. And then I want to also remind everybody that sharing, part of this deal is the whole reason we do this is to get the word out on the reality of the species, so we can just get this all behind us, the hoopla, and move forward into a new realm of understanding and disclosure. So the best way you guys can help, and it's really impossible for us with shadow banning and such, is to share this stuff on social platforms. So select a video out of the line, go and look at all the content, select something that pertains to what you want to convey, and share that on social platforms, because that's the only way that we're going to get unfiltered disclosure from the field out there. To those of you who may not have seen us yet, we do scientific-based methodology in our research, not just Bigfoot, other enigmas as well, and have been extremely successful in gaining understandings that others seem to have not yet. So let's see. So I'm going to go ahead and I'll announce the members that are going to be in this expedition. There may be yet one more, and if that comes to term, we'll announce that. First off, there's myself, and then there's Boyd Ulmer. He's an experienced Bigfoot investigator. He's worked with BFRO for years and years. He's done dozens of expeditions before with a few very high level. Has a lot of experience, won't run, solid as a rock, calm. And then we have Chris Reinhardt. He's well experienced with the species. He's had a lot of time in the field. He's had personal encounters, quite a few years at this. We got Ron Kastner, kind of the same thing. He's normally works on his own, but highly experienced in the field. I mean, as far as rough country and all the rest. So he's going to be a great benefit. And we have Chris Connor, and I don't know Chris yet too well, so we're going to come together. He has an extensive experience and history that will relate to field research, field studies, communications, things like that. Then we have Johnny Two Bears. He's been a great fan of our work and expressed his want to be there explicitly, above and beyond, and then I wouldn't have left him out of this deal. And then there's Wade Hollenbeck, and Wade Hollenbeck's a good friend of mine. He's been out with me a couple of times. He's actually been at the GLST research area, which very few people have had the opportunity to go in there, since that's where our family unit is, and we can get around them pretty, just about any time we want. And so Wade also joined me in Michigan when we did the 5 days up there after the conference we did up there. So we did 5 days deep in the field in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, just south of the lake. And we're extremely successful there. And I was very impressed with Wade in the field. He had a good attitude, steadfast, another guy that just won't run regardless. And that's a quality with everybody here. So in a situation, I know everyone says, oh, I would stand there and whatnot. Well, you do until you don't. And that's kind of how it is. When every cell in your body says, for your own sake and safety and to preserve your life, you should leave now, to be able to not only quell that, but to operate under that condition, still keep your head. That's really important, because that's what's going to keep us safe on this deal. So I guess we can go right in. What I intend to do on this one, it's kind of a nonchalant presentation today. We're going to go through some files here and take a look at the area we're going to go, and then we'll talk about a few other things as well that I've been wanting to discuss. We're going to cover a little bit about funding, people and how they get funded for this research and whatnot, and how we'll get into the pros and cons of how it's treated within the Bigfoot arena anyway. And then as well, got some upcoming conferences that I'll be presenting at, and that'll be at least 2 so far that are solid, and then we have another one that is hanging in the midst, and we'll see on those. And I'm just going to give kind of the pre on those. Later on, we'll talk more about those as well. So we're just going to kind of cover these kind of quick, and then some work I'm doing with old Duke from World Bigfoot Radio on the side, and we'll get into a little bit of that. And then there's also one last subject we'll be discussing a little bit, and that's kind of the breakdown or break apart and splitting several groups in the Bigfoot community recently, just all of a sudden, just almost like an eruption. So we'll get into that just a little bit too. But so let's go ahead and take a look at some of the stuff from the lodge. So the area we're going to be going, it's in central New Mexico. Some people may recognize the range. This is actually it. So we just cover here, I guess. And you can see, so this from the bottom to the top here, this is 4,500 foot elevation, and then the top up here at the ridge is over 10,000. And so you have a 5,500 foot change, you can see right here. So we're looking at an easy 2,000 foot with absolute 1,000 foot verts all over the place. And this isn't flat at all. So this is a layered sequence of these highly eroded, jagged peaks that extend quite a ways. I mean, actually a long way. So if you were to go up there, there's canyons in between here you can't visually see, and then appears the same thing. There's hidden valleys and rear sections you can drop behind. The scale is just really tough to appreciate. Here's another picture from the ridge, and this is a place we went to and did some investigation to get into some caves and things. So this is a type, excuse me, this is a type of limestone at the top, and these layers that I'm pointing out, these layers are massively thick because these are 100-foot pine trees, standard big pine, and so these up top are probably 40-60 feet. And so when we look at these cliffs here, we're looking at 100-foot verts, 300-foot verts, 400-foot verts, and even taller. And in these, this is a ancient limestone cap that was thrust upward, that they are still full of fissures and things from being thrusted, as well as all the drainage from ancient time. And this isn't a flat cap. This isn't like a thin belt. This is actually an angled uplift. So the uplift is sitting like this, and we're seeing the face of it, so to speak. From our perspective, I guess here, yeah, that's right, from our perspective. So it'd be about like this for what we see, and we're seeing the tips of my fingers, basically. And so these giant underground drainages go all through this. Then below this section is that we can see here is the thrust, and up here's that limestone cliff section, so you can really get a view on how big this stuff is. And this is the thrust, and this type of granite is also full of holes, let alone fissures, for being metamorphic and really thrusting the way it did. And you can kind of see the different pushes in the grain and things to it. And so what we end up with is what's called a Gausson's cap. And so you have gases and things that tend to put blowouts between where the granite met the limestone. But what I'm saying is all this provides a massive opportunity for caves and large fissures and structures within the ground for these things to occupy that you can't get to, because a lot of them are in the granite in a 1,000-foot face or in one of these 400-foot faces. And in this mix, I'll actually show you a photograph on this layer below where I am now, on this mid layer here. It doesn't look that big, but when you're walking up here, you're just an ant, a little pea at the base of the cliff, and these are so steep that if there wasn't heavily forested, you could literally slide or roll off. But they're so heavily forested like this, what we see just at our feet off the cliff. They're extremely dense. So, you're going to hit a tree. You don't go anywhere. But I did manage to get a picture of a Bigfoot at about 250 feet down below me, and he's black, and he was swaying back and forth. And the reason they do that is if you've ever been in thick foliage and you want to look at something at distance, you can do this, and then it stands out more because everything moves around it in relationship to it. So you get an exact location and distance that way. And so he was sitting there rocking and rocking. He's pure black with a gray face. And yeah, we'll get to that in a minute though. And this is another picture from the upper ridge down. You're on top of the limestone here, and we're looking down on top of the extruded granite. And what you can see is it's large sections of rolling hills. And I mean, the scale is very, very difficult to make out, but this is miles from here to here, see? And so it's just massive in scale, and you have all these sections of inner valleys and crags and springs and caves and old ancient mines from Spain and all this other stuff. So, and this country has really zero trails that actually transcend the whole thing. They have some that come up and kind of loop and go down, but any of this is just totally unoccupied. And you can probably see why traveling it for a human is really unbelievable. And going up there is not easy either. I mean, you're looking at real high altitude. You're at 10,000 in the last picture. And if a person's not acclimated for that elevation, and then you go try to push, 5, 6, 7 miles up there to get in somewhere in a day, the likelihood of you actually pulling that off is not real high. It's a bitch. And then to take like a bike or something, most of the trails are semi-maintained. They do have one in there that's pretty good, but most of them you need to be experienced on rock, route, a lot of elevation changes in steps. A step 2 foot tall or foot or whatever, because that's how the trails up there are. So. Yeah, I'll go ahead and I'll let you see the Bigfoot that we got a picture of up there. And like I said, it's at a ways, and this is with a 10 meg camera with a 70 millimeter zoom, a Sony A1, and this is what it is. I mean, this is as good as it was. So I'll zoom in, but he's actually very center frame, and I'll just run around him real quick. He's right there. And the interesting thing is, even at this, if you looked at the whole frame in the photo and you were to, let's say, throw this into a program and pick out one color versus another color, well, he's actually the only thing in the entire frame that is that shade of purplish black. Nothing, not any other shadow or hole or anything is that color. And so when I'm looking down the slope at him, he actually, to my eyes, he looked about like that or whatever. And so, but I'm watching him sway back and forth, and I took a couple of shots, and this was basically the best out of that, and it's pixelated because of the distance he was. And this is basically all we get. So we get to see the shoulders and the gray face kind of sticking out past that limb. And unfortunately, yes, it's very pixelated. That's it would have been better cameras, better technology, which is, money. And of course, this was several years ago. So it was before, we could do too much. Like 10 meg now is nothing. Your phone usually has 13, right? And it's still crap. So, and at the time, this was a good camera. This is like an $800 camera not too long before we shot this. So you can see that's just the best we could pull off doing with the technology we had. So, but like I said, so I'm looking down a slope that's about 45 degrees. If you were to start rolling in a clear spot, it would be hard to stop. And he's on a protrusion kind of in that slope, and just watching the party go by at the base of one of those big cliffs. Now I'll show you another subject we were able to catch. We had gone up there after the UNM conference, when I presented the results of a year's field study for the University of New Mexico in Gallup. Jeff Meldrum was there, and he wanted to go somewhere. And I kind of recommended where the GLST was, even though for reasons afterward, maybe I'm glad that I didn't. But I was willing to do that anyway. And instead which was easy access, and we could find evidence and sign very quickly. They elected to go to the high mountains because they wanted to show Dr. Meldrum that there was high mountains in New Mexico. Unfortunately, when we went up there, there was a couple of feet of snow, and so any of the activity probably would have been below snow line except for transient movement. And so we did about an 8-mile or 10-mile loop on snowshoes because it wasn't packed, and an off trail it could be up to like 3 feet deep. And so we did that, and unfortunately we didn't see a lot. We did have some audio reports and things, and it was enough to make Dr. Meldrum a little nervous on the way back out in the dark. But I mean, nothing that we would call, it was nothing intimidating, let's put it that way. Just some vocal location hooping back and forth a little bit, no big deal. But in the dark and at night, and you're still 4 or 5 miles out from the highway, and you're on snowshoes, and you're on a mountain with absolutely nobody, I guess you could have some trepidation about that if you're not used to that type of activity. But anyway, to make longer story short, so on the way in there, we had stopped a few times, and we had some vocal report and a flash of movement from the executive director, Christopher Dyer, the executive director of University of New Mexico, Gallup. But he couldn't make the entire walk. Excuse me. So we set out one of my guys to walk him back to the parking lot. And anyway, but he did have those encounters, which was really cool. but they were unfortunately behind us quite a way, so we kind of missed it. And it may have been the alarm sound from us passing as well, and they happened to be where they could catch it because it wasn't very loud. And then so one of the other times we were stopping and taking a quick break, we were kind of talking. Tara and I both had a kind of a weird feeling. It was like, let's take advantage of the moment and just take some pictures and just see what we get. And we'd already discussed this before, kind of a methodology is, if you want to take a picture of something, then get on the other side of a subject matter and take a picture so it appears as if you're taking a picture of the subject matter, and that way you can get the background without something be alerted and moving out of frame. And so she did this in a few angles around our little group, and was able to catch a subject. He's quite a ways off. He's at a safe distance watching us, but he's really big, and we catch him both looking at us and turning and moving away. And unfortunately, there was a higher res version of the looking at us, and we have the lower res copy to work with. Something happened to the higher res, but we do have the higher res after he's turned and moving. And so you can note the change in position for yourself as we look at these pictures. And the first one is this one here, which is it's a decent picture. And you can see over on this side is, let's go ahead and bring it in full frame here at least. Okay, so you can see on the left side over here's the far left is myself, and next to that is Jeff Meldrum, and then over his head here is where this frame is. And when we lighten this frame and do some filters and contrast, and you can actually see what this is here. Probably can't read it on this picture, but this is the what was done, the filtering that was done, exactly what the program was, the contrast, brightness, and the filter and everything that went into being applied here, so you can repeat it basically in Adobe. But we can obviously see a subject standing erect here. We get the nose, lips, eyes, eyebrows, somewhat conical head, super large traps, super large shoulders, and a pretty good, what appears to be pretty good belly mass. There is some foliage tying in shadows, so it creates shadows that kind of stay during the filtering. So some of this in front are branches, or the shadow of branching and stuff covering parts of him there that kind of fit in. And then we have as well, this is the subject turn. Now you'll notice this is actually a little higher res, and you can see pretty good the texture of the hair, the chestnut color, inconsistent with everything else. This is the back of the big head, and his trap busts off on this side here. You can see a massive trap here, and lower back, the line of the lower back is, and this dark line is actually not part of him. This is a protruding stump that's in the way, so that's not like his elbow or anything sticking out. And then you see the same lines that were the tree branch from before creates these shadows here that he's in front of. But we can tell during filtering, what we're looking at. I don't think I have the filtered image. Let's see, available. So no, not readily available. So, but we can tell during the filtering what we're looking at basically, because we can eliminate. You can eliminate. With a vector scope filter, you can eliminate any, let's say, said color. So if I wanted to get rid of this green, I could just get rid of that. I could set it in the program to disregard that, and then it would all disappear. And so what we'll generally do is look for colors and stuff in there, and then see where that is on the color map and how like color it is. So sometimes it looks similar, but the frequency is different. And so that's why a lot of this is gone. It's not just light blasting the image. It's that is dissimilar in a sense. So the Bigfoot or whatever tends to like anything. So if you take a white piece of paper into a green forest, take a picture of it, and then look at that on a color scale, the piece of paper will actually be green from all the green reflected light. And the way their hair structure works is translucent without a medulla, so it has a tendency to lens light a little bit and to carry light. So it's refracting it or diffusing light. So it's kind of like taking a frosted window pane out and putting it in a green forest. You're going to see a diffused greenish look to that material. So along with kind of the color cover sheen. And so that's what we've got in here. And the truer color to the subject is in this photo, because he hasn't been through, this has not been put through a vector scope. This has been put through just light blasting contrast and stuff like that. So we get to see the color, and it's really ironic too, because I don't think Jeff believed there was really any activity going on around him, and then directly over his hat, over his head, we catch that subject just kind of peering, checking us out. So that was really, really cool. And some of the other evidence we've got from up there in the past is we got some great track sequences. You can see here, this is one that was December. This is actually right at 10,000 foot. This is up on top. And above the lodge, the lodge is probably at just maybe 8,800, maybe 9,000. And so this was actually on top of the crest, with the lodge down below. And so you can see the size here. That's a size 10 boot put in the thing. And so we're looking at a track here, a total of 15 inch. So this stick is a surveyor stick. So what we're looking at is 1'2" to 1'3" right there. And so our heel at the very back, without the little bit of the snow, the wind was blowing this way, so a little bit of the back edge here got covered, but it's right at 3. And so you're looking at about a 15-inch track, which is pretty decent size subject, adolescent. But the step gap and the spacing here is what was really outstanding. So you can see between that front track and the next heel print, the distance. And then you have another one all the way to here, and then he slows when he turns around these trees and goes down below the tree set. And when we put a stick on this, we're looking at a step. This is a 7-foot stick, and you're looking at a 6-foot step gap right there. From there to there is a 6-foot step gap. Try that sometime without kicking the snow in any direction, planting firmly, and everything else. It's pretty difficult to try to pull that off. Then the next step, which is even more surprising, is actually 8 feet. So this is a 7-foot stick. It's more than 8 feet. This is a 7-foot stick. And you're looking at a 15-inch print, the heel here. So the end of the tape should be here. So you're actually looking at about 1.5 feet missing. So you're talking 8.5 feet between that little hop and that land. And that was amazing in itself. I mean, that was big. And then when he landed sideways, you can see the big toe structure here. He lands this way, and then he turns immediately, kicked out the snow a little bit, and then went around this tree. And actually, he might have gone quad at this point, because we believe these are fists. So he got to here, did this big hop, landed all monkey style, and then put the fist down, turned, and went that way around the tree, which was really, it's good evidence. And then from the face during different season, I think this is in the fall, this is one of the tracks from one of the subjects. And you just see basically the heel plant back here. And what it did was it stepped on the heel and outside of the foot on this side. And as it transitions its weight, it rolled it, across the foot and up. And so that's why we see the toe dug in up here and pushed down, and it looks kind of wide and scattered a little bit. See, we got another one from up there. I think those are all the prints from up there. So also, I'm going to note this is a picture of one of the tree placements that was along the trail the day we went in with Dr. Meldrum. And you could say this is what it is, that Dr. Meldrum felt that it fell in this position, but the leverage to get the root ball here is not likely. If we are at all honestly, if we look at this. So this is an old bleached part of a tree. It's not the same tree as this one. They're two different pieces. Both of them are lodged in this groove here, but they're not the same one. So to have got the root ball up this high, we would have had to pivot it somewhere besides that high, because basically if you lift this up, the root ball is still going to be in this position. It's not like the root ball was down here, a tree fell over, the weight of the tree pulled the root ball up, or the root ball would still be away from it. There's no way for that tree to have spun all the way around and then got slid down here unless something basically stabbed it in here. So we're 80-85% sure this has been done. Now this is small to average for what's up here at the lodge area. Everything I've got to show you during this presentation will not suffice to say what we're going to bring back from the expedition. This would be a small to average tree placement. They have hundreds of trees larger than this put in an area of the ground that's about, it's about a quarter of a mile to a half mile across. And then you have the lodge kind of at the back one side of this. But in this area, when you enter it, there is, there's all the branches, boughs, everything. I mean, even the 20-foot stuff is gone on the ground. There's no small trees. There's no foliage. There's no brush. There's no scrub. There's nothing. It's all gone. And then, like I said, all the branches up to about 40 feet. So you're looking through this one section of the forest which just absolutely been cleared out. Not even a branch up there. They've all been broken off, and you can see where they've all been snapped off. But there's none on the ground. There's nothing on the ground like that. But what is on the ground are whole trees. And none of these trees apparently fell in here because all the native trees at the right density are all still standing. But there's hundreds of gigantic trees, with the smallest being maybe 12, 18 inches thick. It'll be the tiniest, but most of them upwards between 24 and 36 inches thick, with the root balls in the entire trees. And they've been carried in and intermixed between the trees on the ground to where it's like pixie sticks with living trees sticking out of them. You can't run or walk in any direction at all. The only place you can go is where back in the day, they had cut through the chainsaw, but then that's all been covered by dozens and dozens of new trees that they've placed across this trail to block all this area out. So if you were to have to run somewhere, you couldn't. You could potentially, because they're stacked 3 to 5 high everywhere, and it's like giant flood debris, but this is on the side of a mountain that's never seen a flood or an avalanche here. And so, but we call it the kill zone because anything gets in there is fodder. Literally, they can see across all of this open space for all this space, just like a kill zone around a military installation where they have a big open zone around, and that way anything crossing that zone is an open line of fire. Well, for them, this is an open line of fire. They're so big and they can go boreal, they can cover this whole area and they can get to you before you could get out. Because as a human, we have to climb over and over and then go under and then squeeze this way and then climb over that. And I don't mean climb over it like you put one foot on one side and then put your foot on the other side. I mean, some of these you would have to climb 2 or 3 logs high with the logs 2 feet in diameter hanging in all kinds of directions. So it's really quite intimidating. The being in there for us, we were already on the very end of a long expedition when we went through there, and I have a tendon that was already going bad because we took a wrong trail, which dropped us into this lower region that almost no one goes into, and kind of thank God we did. But we got down in there real late, and it was going to be over 6 miles out from that point, and we were supposed to already be out or near out by the time dark hit. And so we just moved basically through this area as fast as we could. And when we had moved through a good portion of the kill zone, there was a tree. We've all seen, you have a trees standing and then you got a tree woven through the trees that are standing, There's a tree like that up there that's bigger than any example I've ever seen. And you couldn't pull it out with a truck or a car, or probably even a semi wouldn't pull this out. It's because it's about a 40-foot tree, 12 to 18 inches thick, and it goes through 6 larger trees, and it's actually bent like a snake. It's not dramatic, it is dramatic, I guess, because to bend one of those trees, it takes an absolutely immense amount of force, and they had to spread the trees that are growing so wide to put it in that when everything's back, that there's so much pressure that it bent this tree all the way through them. That's why I say you could never get it back out. And it's probably 25 feet off the ground. And when we saw that, man, I mean, that was a clincher. It's like, what? It's not only just like, wow, what a Bigfoot could do. It's like, what in the world could do this? And I'll tell you, when we were at one portion on the kill zone, the trail through there, which I call it a trail, but it's just where they've cut between with chainsaws. And then we had to cross probably 20 down trees. But we came to one point where there was well over 100-foot tree, at least 36 inch at the base, with 12 to 15 foot of root ball, rock, everything on it, placed where the trail was going through like this, just placed in the trail, like smack on top of the trail. And it just completely blocked the trail. I mean, there was no way you couldn't even walk around it. And so the Forest Service years ago, or whatever, at what time, had then just cut a new trail through the trees that are laying down all over the place. They just chopped a new trail with chainsaws around this root ball, because there was nothing else you could do. You couldn't, I mean, you can't even climb over it. But that's how big of stuff they're carrying in there. And those two examples, that root ball and that carrion, and amongst the hundreds and hundreds, it's just, and then the one that's woven in the trees was enough. We didn't even want to stop and take a picture. Just in all honesty, we didn't even care. It was one of those things, no, not right now, not when it's getting dark. We could already hear stuff down below, where we saw what we believe was the lodge, which actually, that clinched it, because when we got to the other side of or near the other side of the kill zone from our approach, I looked down slope and I noticed logs on the ground sticking kind of out, but they almost looked like they were sticking out of the ground, And then we realized that all the boughs and branches for this huge 1/4 mile area, everything that was a branch, all the foliage, everything that would have been deadwood fallen, everything had all been collected up. It was gone. So where was all that stuff? But that's where it was. We saw it. There was a big pile of logs like a beaver dam, probably 70 foot long, and I guesstimate 30 foot across. But what we could see of it was so many feet, but it was melded into the hill. And this giant pile of 20 and 40 foot trees, making this beaver dam looking thing, was then covered with all those branches, boughs, a lot of them still green. So it's being added to. But we're covering this whole thing and made it look almost like part of the hill. And then a lot of it had dirt thrown on it. But a lot of the dirt as well had gone down between holes. So you could tell where it was hollow and where the ground, stopped and it started, but only because of that. So you had to take a real good look to see it, even though it was that big. It just, your brain just didn't fit it. Once it did, and it became so obvious, oh my gosh, and we started seeing holes up slope and realizing how big this all was. We basically just left. So this, like I said, this is going to be the time to go in. This is when we take the team that we wanted to take and do this the way it was supposed to be done. And now, of course, they've got the entire trail is off limits. Matter of fact, it's interesting because there's so much conflicting information having to do with this trail. And so you can see it says, in one thing in the national deal, it's open, no problem, blah, blah. And then everything local says trail closed, area closed. Even the parking area, you have to be out of there by a certain time of night. There's no camping. There's no campground. Even though USFS, and everybody says, it's not USFS managed. It's actually off their place, but it is a type of wilderness area management. But regardless, it all says camping is fine, but yet there's not a single campground, and every sign says no overnight camping. And this is all for this reason. That's all part of it. They try to just erase this place. Most trail maps don't show this trail at all. And it's interesting because the lodge is sitting in a confluence between 3 springs. So logistically, within a half mile to a mile in 3 directions are springs from this point. And so it is interesting that they kind of want to erase this place completely, it seems like. And it just gives credence to what we've seen. And then as well, we went in there in the winter. I don't know if you haven't seen the video, please go check it out. It's the Lodge Kill Zone video. We went in one winter time on mountain bikes and tried to spearhead to the lodge itself and get back out. And we did it purposely in what we felt was mostly dormant weather, midwinter, a lot of snow. We did it on mountain bikes, like I said. So it was a pretty tough entry, but it was the only way to get in fast. And we knew we were going to have to end up walking the bikes most of the way out. But when we got just above the lodge area, after we made the trail transition to the descent toward that deeper location, we found we got to the perimeter, not, I'm going to say the kill zone, but the lodge territorial activity perimeter, let's say. So there's basically an established perimeter they've made about a mile or maybe a little more from the lodge itself. And this is several barriers made by a network of large trees laid on the ground, and then standing trees or standing logs, bleached logs, together to stand out. And that kind of is an entry or gateway through this area. And so they're not preventing people almost, they're more herding them through these spots to do the travel. But out of there were a set of feet print, lady's feet print and man's feet print. And the man was using a stick and was injured. And the injury we could tell was a head injury or upper injury, because when he would rest, he would sit down and hang over and just drip blood like you would as if you had your head hanging over and it's dripping out of your nose or your face. But it was a lot of blood, and it was consistent. It was bright, and there was also yellowish fluid along with it. And so it was pretty scary, because we figured potential extreme head wound. Could have been bleeding out the ears or whatever. Whenever they'd slow and go uphill, like I said, it would get pretty thick. And we followed that for a couple miles back till it got totally dark on us. We actually followed it for miles because we got within so far of the parking area, and figured if they've made it this far, we've got to go all this way back and get our bikes, then loop the entire thing back out again that night. So this is 20 miles total. And so we were going to have to do that no matter what. So we let them go forward, and where we were at, we had no cell reception. So we went back, got the bikes as fast as we literally could, got down into town. And then on that video, you can see we actually talked to FS guy that just got off duty down there. And as soon as he found out where it was, where this occurred and where these people had come out of, he didn't even want to go look, didn't want to report it, he just blew us off. And then we, as a closure on that, we did hear that about 1:30 a.m. that morning, 2 people were airlifted off the mountain. Thank God, right? I mean, because USFS, they weren't going in there, period. They just said, no, we're not, he's like, I don't even care. And you can see the apathy and the disinterest and him just wanting to get the hell away from there as soon as we kind of make it clear where this place is. But I've got a short video prepared here. I'm going to go ahead and play for you guys. And it's it's when we get to the barrier wall on the snowpack when we're going in, and we find the blood trail. So let's see, let's get all this, make sure our audio is fired up and get this rolling here for you. Okay, so I mentioned a minute ago in a video clip that there was a spot where the Bigfoots had obviously marked the start of the territory. They didn't want anybody going in. We see the blood trail comes right out under their territorial marker here. This is all fresh add-in, massive trees uprooted. And this is the size stuff that's common around the lodge. I mean, if you look, see these big long strings of logs here? This is a barrier wall. This is a fence. They're telling you all these came across like a fence here. Look, they come across, they come across, they come across, they come across, come across, come across. And you have the big ones. And they're across again. They're telling you don't go past this point. We know the lodge is down here, about 800 feet below us. Was the scariest stuff we have ever seen built down there. It's just massive stuff, and it's built out of trees like those that have been uprooted. And if you look like that one, there's no hole at the root ball where that tree come up. And we have carrions down there where there's hundreds of examples of carrions like that, even where the root ball has been set directly in the middle of the trail, 15 feet high with the roots on it, on trees bigger than those. And that tree's a good 30 inches or more thick over there. I don't want you to see these territorial markers here. This old bleached wood that's stacked up here, about 22 foot high. Old bleached wood, doesn't go here. There's no stumps here. And you can see they're just all matching twisted bark pole, all kind of laid together. You can see how they're fashioned up here. And I'll take you over and show you kind of what I mean. This is a fresh tree out, and it didn't come out of the ground right there. So there's parts of it laying there, but these are like these up here, big carrions. And they just pulverizing this stuff. Now the whole forest isn't like this. It's done in these big fence-like systems. And what we're really concerned with, though, is this blood trail that goes through here. And I think we should go ahead and move on. I think it's pretty scary because whoever's bleeding out, you can see just mass amounts of it. And whoever's bleeding out is doing it at a rate. It's just unbelievable, and it's not deer, so it's really scary. You got 2 people with a walking stick. Deer have all walked this trail, but it's obviously the person using the stick, and the many drips of yellow fluid here that's not blood with the blood is really sketchy. You see the difference. So we're kind of thinking they just may have a tremendous head wound, which would not be out of character for the Bigfoots reported here have killed people and hit people in the head with rocks before, putting one woman in intensive care. Let's see here. See, that's bleeding on top of the footprint there. And how much when the person slows down, you get a little uphill grade. The person slows down a bit and instantly have tons dripping. Make sure you stay in sight, Rod. What do you got? Oh my goodness. See, and this is the broad, flat kind of digs. Could be melt out. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and cut this bit too now. And we'll continue on down this trail. It's pretty sketchy when rangers have told you 30 people a year vanished here. We know the Bigfoots here are aggressive. You see trails of a couple of greenhorns cruising through. And yeah, that's not good. Okay, all right, we're gonna cut this now. We've got a bunch of cameras rolling, so. So there you go. You know, we could take it for what we will. Some people say, oh, maybe it's a poacher and they're carrying a deer and it's draining out. Well, for one, the heart would have to still be pumping to put that much out unless you were bleeding it out as you walked. But then they had gone under logs that were going over the trail and over them both. And so we could see they didn't carry a deer out of there, whoever it was. And then as well, people say, oh, maybe it was a shot deer that was bleeding out. Well, they would occasionally, the deer tracks are not all the way along this trail. We followed this for miles. And the people walked even off trail to go straight instead of follow. So they would break fresh snow, and the blood trail was with them the entire time. And like I said, you'd see whenever they'd have something to sit on, they would sit down and just bleed out between, their feet. And so it was pretty obvious that it was a human that was bleeding out. And and as well, it was an upper, wound up here. So, that's why we took it serious. The lodge and that area is not to be messed with. And so putting this team together, 5 years is a long time to wait for the team to assemble, but I kind of knew it would have to do so, like I said, organically and just fall together and before it was going to work. And I'm really confident with who we've got. I think at least 4 of the guys are vets, some with over 20 years experience in the military, and they understand how to operate as a team, how to operate based on logistics and timing, not necessarily on their own free will, so to speak. It doesn't help to have some guy out there who's going, oh, well, I'm going to go over here and look at this, and that kind of thing. This has to be much more organized if we're going to come back with the documentation that we want and try to get it in total. Like I said, hopefully, really honestly, in here, I hope we don't have an encounter. I've been up there before and had when we stayed right on the ridge at 1,000 foot above this, we had a very large subject come within maybe 100 feet of us in the dark and do a cat meow, meow, like literally. But you could tell it was coming from something huge, and it did it 3 or 4 times, and it was much more intimidating than a lot of the other vocals we've had, because what does he mean by doing that? Obviously, he understands the association from the cats with the human, and is that calling us out in the dark ground? Hi, I'm a feeble little kitten, come help me? Or is that, a way to direct some form to a sound to us that we will in particular recognize. It actually felt like the former. It felt a lot more like, aren't you curious? Aren't you going to come out here in the dark and take a look at this lost little kitty? Which really doesn't give anybody a good feeling when you're out there the way we were, no weapons at that time and stuff. And speaking of weapons and carrying, so we probably will have protection on this round. I carry bear spray. I mean, it's actually not bear spray. It's, you'd consider it knock an elephant down spray. So we look at the rating on the stuff, and common bear spray is 1 million to 2 million Scoville heat units. That's the SCU. And capsaicin, the active chemical, usually ranges around 10%. So you get 10% chemical at 1 million to 2 million SCU. And we carry 18% at 3.5 million SCU. And so if you shoot an animal with this stuff unnecessarily, it's animal cruelty. Repeated times, you could actually cause an animal to asphyxiate and die. And so it swells the membrane, swells the tongue, swells the throat, bronchial tube, swells the eyes shut. It actually is an attack prevention. So bear spray is an attack deterrent. And so, and this isn't paid an endorsement or anything, but Wildfire is the company that produces the material. If you want to carry it to back off one of these, this is what you'd have to have at a minimum. It's produced up to 5 million SCU, but I'm not sure it's sold to the public market at that strength because it can be fatal. And so anyway, so that's basically the plan for the lodge. And we are scheduled for sometime in early May. The exact date may not be released, but you guys will know as soon as it goes down. If we can do some live streaming from in that location, we will. It's a strange area, so if cell phone service works, then it doesn't work. GPS is almost useless once we get so far in. It begins to get extremely inaccurate with 100, 200 foot of drift, and then you'll just lose altogether. You just won't get anything at all. And I don't know what's causing that exactly. And we have our suppositions, because there are other things in the mountain besides Bigfoot. So it's a pretty strange area. So that's going to be how that is, and hope for the best. We're actually going to set up a GoFundMe page. So our guys are coming in from Connecticut. We've got one more guy from New Mexico besides myself, and then everyone else is coming in from out of state. So we got Connecticut, Arizona, Georgia, Florida, Wisconsin. So we've got, guys flying in from all over the country to do this, very select. And I think, we're probably going to end up setting up a GoFundMe page to assist with the expenses of getting these guys basically flown in here and dealing with their stay and stuff like that. There's never any profit in anything we do. Whether we're selling our equipment or our merchandise, then we don't make anything. I mean, we're lucky if we buy batteries or we can upgrade a camera or something like that. And that's about it. And I don't mean frequently, basically infrequently. And that brings me to kind of one of our other topics, which is funding. So we're talking funding in the Bigfoot realm, and it's the only realm that's this way that I'm aware of, because certainly not in other zoological or genre. So if I want to save the whales, I mean, if I'm going to go do something and say, I'm going to go, cut fishing nets out of an area to reduce potential harm to the whales, and I want to start a GoFundMe, everybody's just fine with that. If I say, I want to go, research, even private research for the benefit of salmon going up a particular creek, and I want to do a community outreach, and so I'm trying to get research and I need some money, and man, no one has a problem with that. It's great. The moment, some reason or another, that a Bigfoot researcher who's above board trying to do it correctly for the benefit of the masses, which are you, the people, the first moment they want to sell merch or they want to do anything in the world to try to not pay for what they're doing or make a profit even, but maybe try to recoup some of the expense that it takes to do this, which is thousands of dollars. It's anywhere, if you're going to seriously research, you're going to spend anywhere between 7 or 8 to 20 grand a year doing it, just because what it costs to do everything. I mean, just the equipment, batteries, travel, the time that you've got to do that versus not doing something else. Let's say the amount of hours put in the field in order to actually do research. It's not a weekend next to your pickup truck or something. In order to be prepared to go into rough country, stay in rough country, and do scientific collection, it takes considerable resources, and to try to do it correctly. Let alone, none of us can afford a $250,000 camera to get the picture that everybody's waiting for, which requires technology that's out of everybody's budget. Even 15 to 16,000 for a decent video camera. That still isn't a camera you can get something even on Netflix quality. I mean, let alone the type of nature photography at long range that we're talking about in video is going to take 250 grand in equipment to be able to get those type of shots that the public is demanding all the time. Even though it could happen tomorrow, we could get within 30 feet and happen to have one of the good cameras out that's going to provide a clear image even at 30 or 40 feet. What we see on TV and things, they look clear until you zoom in and actually take a look at any one frame. Then they're still the same way. You can't zoom any of this digital without losing resolution, period. So, when it comes to funding, we sell merch, and I encourage you guys to go buy it, simply because you couldn't buy enough to offset our expenditures in this stuff. We're beyond the heavy side of spending, because we're constantly doing development and technology and methodology to try to pull this off, and we're doing things bigger and above what the normal hobbyist, let's say, would do. And my hats are off to all of them as well. If that's what you can do, do it. I got respect for anyone who goes out and tries. But like I said, but we don't kind of play that level, so we're on a whole different game. But I really feel for everyone out there that is trying to just cover expenses and being called a charlatan and a snake oil salesman and someone who's just in it for the money. And I think it's pretty obvious when you look at the people and their research and what they're doing and what they're trying to contribute, and how outspoken they are for the truth of the subject and things like that. I think it's pretty obvious who these people are that could be potentially doing it. And what I see more than that is, you see companies that sell T-shirts, let's say, and they market Bigfoot T-shirts all the time on social media platforms, and they pay to have those done. They're paying for that, $1,500, $2,000 advertising campaign to sell Bigfoot T-shirts, and the Bigfoot crowd eats them up. Not a dime goes back into the enigma or the understanding of it or research or anything. Not a dime. It just goes into somebody's pocket who really doesn't need it. While some guy that's over there makes his T-shirt, or a research club or a research group association makes merch, one form or another, keychains, necklaces, and they want to sell it, people just assume that they're already just trying to profit off the enigma. And we see some of this, of course, through the hobbyists as well, who are using the money from their sales to pay for the hobby, which in a sense isn't really that cool. I mean, I don't, bank on that, but I got no problem with anybody basically trying to make a profit out of this that is at least consuming the information, spreading that understanding, even talking amongst friends, whatever it takes. The only time I don't like it is when the corporate edge of it comes that have no interest in this whatsoever, no knowledge of it whatsoever, and they just want to pull money out of the enigma. I think that's kind of messed. And so I'll go ahead and advertise our own merch. You can see a KXPD3 up there on the screen. That's something we've developed that is an outstanding piece of audio equipment. Far surpasses a Kohler dish or anything else you can actually buy. Our range is up to 5 times longer than anything else reported. And this is rated by people who have bought them. We've got a human screaming, arguing basically 8 kilometers in British Columbia. So that's 5 miles. And a human talking in the forest, we can register that about a mile. And so that you can compare that to 900 feet from a 27-inch Kohler dish, these big things, these the football stadiums, to this 11 3/4-inch small dish, the PD3. And we've also, we sell recorders that are also more geared toward this type of research. No bells, no whistles whatsoever. Easy to run with gloves. You can live monitor what you're hearing, amplified, super high gain right out of the box. Takes line in, a lot of stuff that that is in everything, of course, Tascam and everybody else, but then they've got it buried between a whole bunch of other features, knobs and buttons that are tough to use with gloves on. And, you know, ours is very small. It's got an all zinc alloy case. It's all metal. I've tested them to 10 degrees below zero. You can still read the screen. They still operate, which outdoes anything else, I'm pretty sure. And so, but those are available too. And then we also have some shirts made up that were cryptids, not just Bigfoot, and you're welcome to go and take a look at those. And I hate to spend so much time on that, but I think it's important because we want to ramp up and do a whole bunch more work, and we're going to need help from people out there. And I'm not telling the people even watching, hey, go buy something, basically, but it's like share the word and let people know that, hey, it's not a bad thing for the crowd who is benefiting from this to reach out and support the researcher that they feel is doing the best work or trying at least. Now, upcoming in the future, we've got 2 conferences scheduled. The first one's going to be in May 14th, and the second one is in July. Both of these, let's see, we've got West Branch, Michigan will be the West Branch Bigfoot Conference, and that's going to be May 14th. And then we have the Michigan Bigfoot Conference on July 30th in Chelsea, Michigan. And so those are both on the ground, and now we're signed into those. We'll be speaking there. Now, since I did the Michigan Bigfoot Conference last year, we've been invited back basically to 3 again in Michigan. Still nothing closer, which is odd. You know, we've got them in Utah, we got them in Colorado, we got them in Texas, but we have yet to receive an invite to any of those. And we also have been invited into Florida as well to present and to investigate. And so, which is really odd. I mean, we're sitting here, and then, you know, 1,550 miles either direction is where they want to hear us, which is pretty interesting. But, you know, it's all appreciated. You know, it's glad to be able to do what I would consider science-based presentation. You know, the presentations I give are, and I will continue to give for now, are based on the ecology and behavior of the species, because it's something that we're just not hearing from anyone. And ecology, you know, how they interact with their environment, how they affect their environment, and then the behavior, you know, how they move, the group movement, solitary movement, different ages, how the different ages move as they get older, and who they hang with and what they kind of do, right down to diet, food procurement, methods of getting food basically, and the types of food they can sustain on that the group needs versus a solitary subject for permanent subsistence and stuff. So, you know, a lot of people don't get to hear that information. Even that information has been quantified and it's been tested. And I would, you know, set our life by every word of it. And a lot of people still just don't get a chance to hear that. We're still hearing encounter stories and whatnot, but what we're offering is the understanding of the species, basically. So if you can ever catch one of our presentations or seminars, you know, I would advise that. Now we just actually got the audio from the Michigan Bigfoot Conference last year, but the video that was taken, the only one I get my hands on, doesn't show what's on the screen. So I'm going to try to have to produce that presentation along with the audio, and I'll try to get that up. The 22 presentations will, of course, be different. There'll be a lot of new information put in there. More pictures of basically, there'll be some of Bigfoot, and we're going into a little more detail about who, not necessarily who so much, but how the information is being sidestepped with most of the popular faces in Bigfoot, and with most of the popular channels as well. That there's a reality to it, that they're kind of going around, dancing around, and we're not real, you know, I mean, there could be various reasons why, but we're going to kind of point that out, because we want, it's really time that people get to see more of the reality of the species than what they've been shown so far, I guess. So, but with that, I think, you know, the only thing left to really talk about and mention is this breakdown that occurred between the Bigfoot groups out there. You know, you had a couple of the Colorado groups at each other's throats. You had the Midwest groups at each other's throats. You have Florida groups at each other's throats. And we have PCW, Pacific Northwest, a couple of those groups at each other's throats. And the dissension and separation is, especially when it erupts in 4 regions of the United States all within the same week or two, probably stemmed from an agenda-based, organized effort to disrupt the crowd. And, we see this every time there's actually anything that looks like outstanding information, data, videos, or anything else. Of course, we see all the trolls say, oh, no. But what is scarier that we see is that a good portion of the crowd, up to 30 to 40%, even more sometimes, becomes swayed by gossip, let's say. So when you have an opinion and push an opinion, even if you feel strongly about it, but the opinion has no basis, and the opinion comes from popular belief being other people's opinions. The whole point is when there's no factual basis, but it's just an idea, that can become into an overwhelming prejudice. And once that prejudice occurs, it's almost impossible to break it. So we see this happening on several of the good stuff. I went through some research the other day with some photos, and it's that, I don't know, I don't think I have it just readily available for us here. I can actually just take a quick look and see. Excuse me. But anyway, there's a photo. Where is it? I'm sure I have it on the desktop, but I don't see it. Too much on the desktop. But there's a photo of a Bigfoot looking up at him. He's standing in a swamp, and it's gone through all this stuff, and everyone sees it now. And the popular thing to say is, "Oh yeah, I saw that debunked. It's a hoax." And I'm going to tell you, that picture was never debunked. In fact, the efforts to debunk that picture, if you actually look at everything in total and put an unbiased point of view on it, solidify the fact that it's valid. And it's outstanding. And they say because the man who received the pictures, he never claims to have taken them, but the man who received them and showed a couple to the public out of the collection, that man, because he had made money off the Bigfoot enigma, trying to pay for his own research, selling T-shirts and all this other stuff, those pictures are fake. And for one, they didn't originate with him. They have nothing to do with him. They're just photographs taken by someone else who happened to be a game warden, and they're on film. Just because they pass through the hands of a researcher that sells T-shirts doesn't make them fake. And then when you hear the pros' opinions, for one, the pros are three people that are all have been or are on TV. They're basically TV personalities. None of the three are true field researchers. None of the three have seen enough representation, let's say, of tracks. So this guy had tracks he was selling, and they had a taper. And one of the pros is out there saying, well, if they have a taper, they're not a Bigfoot. What? Whatever, man. We have seen more tracks than that expert, by far. Not hundreds of prints that were sent to us, that one or two out of a trackway that represent what we're supposed to see for a Bigfoot track, when half of the other ones may not have looked like that based on how the foot was planted. We see full trackways with the foot in every deviation, hundreds of tracks in a single trackway, and we've seen many dozens of these trackways. So collectively, we're talking about thousands of examples of tracks in every situation. And so when we see a 22-inch track and we're tracking a subject, he's leaving handprints and feet print, and he's leaving hair and all this other stuff, we've had a witness and everything else to, visual, and then someone says, oh, well, that print is got a taper to it, it's not real. Or when they say it's over 18 inches, it's not real. We're like, what are you talking about? You have no clue what's real. You're not out there. You're not seeing the potential for either A, their size, or B, their foot diversity. They're an upright primate, which means they're human by every definition in anthropology, period. And humans have great diversity in their feet. All of the humans did, and it's the way it goes. You look at people today. Some people have flat across toes. Some people have great tapers. Some people have a middle toe that looks like a damn finger. And some people have webbed feet. You're looking at this tremendous diversity in advanced primates and the bipedal primates, all known bipedal primates. So why wouldn't this bipedal primate have that same diversity? It would have. We can't assume it wouldn't have. But you have the super pro out there saying, no, it's got to look like Patty's feet. If it's not got club toes almost same size with a thick pad, wide heel, man, whatever. We've seen narrow heels. We've seen curved feet. We've seen feet that are broken into an angle, just like they've been broken at an angle. Those aren't just average people walking around barefoot with feet that are, they don't leave people with feet like that nowadays. not in America. So, but anyway, okay, I digress. So let me go ahead and I'm going to cut this, and thank you guys for attending. This is, like I said, the first notice of the Expedition to the Lodge and Kill Zone. I want you guys to, if you haven't liked it already and you enjoyed it, go ahead and do so. If you haven't subscribed, do that. If you're subscribed, check your notifications, make sure you still are, and do what we can to get the word out, especially as this happens and before this happens, so that people are primed. You can see by looking at the amount of views that show on our videos that the exposure is not high enough for what we want to bring to the table. And this isn't to bring fame to us. It's that the reason we do this is to get the truth to the people and clarify and solidify the understanding of the species, right? And we cannot do that unless people see the information. What tends to happen, and has been happening now for about 5-6 years, even longer, is we are hearing our methodology, research, and results repeated by other people, even on stage. And it's not that the credit thing bothers, but what bothers is that someone's willing to plagiarize where that actually information came from and not be upfront to the people they're sharing it so they can keep themselves in the limelight. Well, that gives them all the attention, but they really don't have anything to say because they're getting bits and pieces of this information and regurgitating it without having the understanding of how we got the information or what the information means, because that needs to come directly from us. And so as we all work forward in this endeavor to bring the truth of the species out, I think it's an important thing for each and every person that sees these videos to share them. So if I have a video, and used to, we'd put a video up and I would get 1,400 views. Even when we only had 1,000 subscribers, you get 1,400 views by the next day, no problem. And we'd go up, 10,000, 20,000, whatever. Now we're lucky to get 1,200 videos at all, ever on a video, and with now over 6,000 viewers. Now we're getting about 2,000 to 3,000 views out of over 6,000 subscribers. Now, if each person was to share, just literally, if each person just grabbed it and shared it on a social platform, it would be exponential what would occur. And so I know it's easy just to blow it off, but what I'm asking you to do is please do that. Please look through our content, grab a link to a video, whatever you think is pertinent, and just start getting the word out there so that when we lay this forward, some pro or otherwise doesn't take this information, show it as their own or talk about it as their own, interpret it down to fit their narrative or interpret it down to change what all this is and what it means before we get a chance to tell you. So if we can only show 1,000 people and then someone else starts talking about our findings basically without mentioning us, makes a determination, interprets that, colors the information, then gives it to 300,000 people. Okay, so the public has then been misinformed. And this is called counter disinformation and disinformation. So one way or another, organized or not. But the only way we can combat that and get this straight to the people so the understanding accelerates, we can move forward, is to share this content. So I ask you to do that from us to you. So, okay, thank you very much. I appreciate you joining us. I'm going to try to jump in the chat room for a minute, and I'll try to adjust some of the chats, and then we'll get out of here. Okay, how are we doing here? Just kind of read back, so well, you guys are going pretty good. Yeah, I see someone says they eat children. They definitely eat children. Well, people eat children. I mean, bears eat children. Cats eat children. They're not something that's not eaten, so. Wow, there's just so much, you guys. I appreciate all the input. If you can't see the chat, I suggest go get on a PC or something where you can. A lot of good information. I see that somebody mentioned the Nephilim here, and I really don't think they have any more to do with the Nephilim. That's a slim view. So the Nephilim were just the offspring of one entity and humans. When there's been dozens and dozens and dozens of entities on this planet over time, human manipulation, human involvement's been part of the gamut now. I mean, at least probably 1 million years, probably hundreds of thousands of years before what we know as the modern human was around. To say that one group or one specific, these are the Nephilim, when there's just so many that it could be, and potentially more valid than that. So, I mean, the Nephilim themselves were civilizers. They were enslavers of mankind. They introduced the first law. They were all about administration. They were all about, technicality, and things like that. They were basically the full antithesis of everything we see in the Bigfoot species. And that's without question. Across the board, actually, they really truly, and they were highly. It was technology. Everything was technology. They were like Spain, bigger, heavier, and to conquer nature was part of their theology, basically. So it was the same thing. Rome. It was man is here to conquer nature, and that was the way they looked at it. And so there's no remorse for nature. There's no remorse for species. That just doesn't exist in that mindset. And that was the same as the Nephilim's mindset. Maybe not even the Anunnaki, basically, who were off-worlders, who we now know were probably what we'd call tall whites. And that would be the Anunnaki of old. So the Anunnaki weren't the human form, or they weren't giants, nothing. The Anunnaki were complete off-world, non-human, and they intermixed with human and bore the Nephilim, who were not like men. They were not all hairy. They were actually considered the most beautiful humans out there, between their complexion and their form and their features and their stature and their intelligence. Their ability was all godlike to people. And so they were the heroes of old. They were the men of renown. And this isn't the Sasquatch creature. There's so many more candidates out there, both known and I'm sure unknown. We probably know maybe 5% of what was out there still. And so just to blend those together is I think that's going down the wrong track. And I think whoever started that should go do more research into the Nephilim and more research into, let's say, the ancient renditions of what we understand as the Bigfoot species. They're throughout history. And there's been large monkey men, both created and or used to do things, large things, operations and building projects in the past, in history, in a historical account, India and other places, Sri Lanka, other places, that for us to assume that it would be some alien entity here just cruising the forest or whatever, or it would be the Nephilim or any of that. It would just be such on a limb, because there's just so many other candidates talked about in the historical record when we look around the world. So let me see what else we've got in here real quick. Like anything I do is real quick, right? Yeah, so that was actually mentioned by Nyanta Dashpande or Dashpan. You're right. He's talking about the same thing I just was right there. When we talk about now, if it wasn't the Nephilim themselves or the Anunnaki themselves, there were also entities that did mess with creatures and create creatures. Now, when it talks about the Anunnaki or the Nephilim messing with animals and all kinds, they did a lot. They did all kinds. And we believe that was genetic, creating chimeras. So most of those probably would not have been viable. Actually, when we look at the South American and some other renditions, like I believe the Popol Vuh, when we talk about creation of man, there was a lot of attempts. And I know even in the Assyrian stuff, there was a lot of attempts made before man could viably reproduce. There was actually a lot of attempts. One of them, he couldn't hold his own urine, so the creation couldn't hold his own urine. So there's all these renditions about creating species, it's the same way we do chimeras today. But creating a viable or species that can reproduce is a whole nother thing entirely. And that was said to be, when with our creation, that was supposed to be a big deal, according to some. So I think we need to factor all these things together before we go too far down any one thing or another. I think that they've got more to do with basically the big hairy men like trolls, and the big hairy men that lived underground and in caves and under bridges and throughout our entire history have been, by our side in the woods and in the rougher terrain and country. So, oh geez, you guys have been busy. Okay, well, See, we got 58 people watching. That's really great, and I appreciate all you guys showing up in here and doing this with us today. It's been wonderful. I hope it's been informative for you. And like I said, keep an eye out for the GoFundMe. If you guys, for the expedition, for the lodge expedition, if you guys can help out, that'd be great. If not, just sharing the word will help out. There are people out there who have the side dime, and there are people who don't. So we just appreciate any kind of help you can give us, and that'd be great, because we really want to put this together for all of us. So with that said, I'm going to go ahead and end this thing, and you guys check out the other content, share it as you can, like, subscribe, hit the notification bell, check your notifications if you're subscribed, and like I said, go and check out the merch we've got, and we'll make all this happen, and keep turn Topaz here into a TV star maybe. Okay, so have a good day, you guys. Bye.